There's no one here, first thing. Second thing, Eddie. So, welcome guys, promotion, go through the front pages and then go to this. Morning, Millie.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Is this our Nairobi background?
Yes.
Okay. Ako Nairobi. Okay, so. And a very good morning to you. Welcome to K24 This Morning. My name is Jeff Mote. Of course, looking at the big stories as usual right here. And of course, getting some analysis on where we stand right now. Is dissolution the way to go? Is it really the solution to the problem that we've had as far as the gender imbalance in the August House is concerned? We'll be talking about that right here on the show. And as always, we love your feedback on the big stories of the day. But even as you do that, in case you aren't clued in on today's news, you don't have your copy of your People Daily, you don't need to rush out to your vendor to get your copy. Oh no, you can get it straight to your phone for only 10 shillings. And the number that you dial is *550 *4#. Once again, the number is *550 *4#. Dial that number and get yourself a copy of the People Daily straight to your phone. It's brought to you by the People Daily and Safaricom. And right here, you could walk away with 250 shillings worth of airtime. And all you need to do is take a screenshot of the e-paper. Tell us where you're watching and your name. Send it to the WhatsApp number at the bottom of the screen. And the first 10 sending that in get themselves airtime. So once again, once you download your e-paper, it'll only cost you 10 shillings. Take a screenshot of that. Tell us your name and where you're watching from. And the first 10 walk away with airtime, all courtesy of the People Daily and Safaricom. So get cracking on that as we look at the big stories right there and jump into the discussion as well. Let's look at the front page of the PD. This is what you'll be getting, of course, as you download your e-paper. Uhuru heads to court as Raila faults Maraga. AG to challenge advisory to dissolve parliament on 3 fronts: resources, timelines for new elections, and absence of a valid High Court order to parliament before CJ's letter. So as you can see, the lines being drawn in the sand as far as opinion is concerned on this. Before this, there was a conspicuous silence from the political leaders as to really where they stand on this advisory. And now we can see the AG taking this to court as well. This makes the front page of your People Daily today. Also in your copy of the PD, how Ruto's coast mini-election designs backfired. Deputy President William Ruto with Jubilee Party SG Raphael Tuju and other officials, among them Msambweni parliamentary aspirant Charlotte Mariam, left at this particular point at the party's headquarters in Nairobi yesterday as the party decided not to field a candidate in that particular by-election. You can get the details of that as well in your copy of your People Daily. Also in the PD, Cabinet to discuss school timetable. Where do we stand on this? When do they go back? Many dates have been mooted right there, but we haven't gotten a definite date and how this will roll out. You can get the details of that in your copy of your People Daily on page 8 as well. So as I said, you can get the People Daily straight to your phone. It's only 10 shillings and the number that you dial is *550 *4#. Let's look at the front page of the Daily Nation now. Jubilee clips Ruto's wings in Kwale by-election. In his words, Deputy President William Ruto had his own views about the Msambweni poll. An aspirant, Ms. Charlotte Akinyi, was at Jubilee headquarters for clearance, but the handshake between President Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga scuttled the plan. That's a lead story in your copy of your Daily Nation. And DP grudgingly accepts party's decision not to field a candidate in Raila's stronghold. That's what they're going with as far as this is concerned. That matter, of course, on the front page of your Daily Nation. Also on the front page of the Daily Nation, Uhuru opposed gender rule from the start. This is what they're saying. Members of Parliament debate the 2/3 gender rule. As you can see, in 2018, the bill was sponsored by Majority Leader Aden Duale, and even on that particular occasion, they still couldn't get the numbers needed to pass this bill on the floor of the House. And you can find that story as well in your copy of your Daily Nation therein. Front page of the Standard now. Did Maraga hand Uhuru BBI sword? Opposition Chief Raila Odinga, his troops, and President Uhuru Kenyatta's allies seek refuge in BBI as Chief Justice Maraga alters the political arithmetic. Which way now for anti-BBI MPs allied to Deputy President William Ruto? That's the question posed by The Standard. You get more details of that in your copy of The Standard. Also, interesting headline on the front page of The Standard, right at the top. Judiciary, no more sex on the bench. You can get the details of impropriety going on within that particular corridor of justice, and that is a story that is on page 2 of your Standard. Still on the front page of The Standard, DP's rude awakening at Jubilee House. Ruto marched into the ruling party's headquarters yesterday with the intention of fielding a candidate for the Msambweni by-election. What changed in the 2 hours he met with party officials is what The Standard seeks to answer, and you can get that story in your copy of your Standard this morning. Finally, on the front page of your Star, Kenyatta blocks Ruto and Raila polls showdown. Tightly knit plan caught DP off guard, forcing him to retreat. ODM gets field day in Msambweni, poised to retain that particular seat. That story can be found as well in a copy of The Star, and that's what takes front and center attention in your copy of The Star this morning. So these are the big stories right here as we're looking at. And of course, right now, it's all about the dissolution solution. How do we move from here? Is that the only way to deal with this particular impasse? You can see already the AG challenging this particular advisory in the court. But let's set the stage as far as this issue is concerned. Now, it's a 21-day ultimatum from women aspirants to President Uhuru Kenyatta as mixed reactions over the impending dissolution of Parliament continues to raise consenting and dissenting opinions. Chief Justice David Maraga on Monday pulled a fast one on the National Assembly following its failure to pass the 2/3 gender rule.
The sentiments over Chief Justice David Maraga advisory to President Uhuru Kenyatta that he should follow suit and see to it that the National Assembly is sent home for failing to pass the 2/3 gender rule are still eliciting mixed reactions. Whereas the Constitution remains unclear on the period under which the President is expected to act on the Chief Justice's advice to dissolve the legislature arm of the government, the coalition of women leaders driven from across the political divide are now coming out with an ultimatum to President Kenyatta to act fast.
The Chief Justice of Kenya, on 21st September 2020, cemented the Kenya Women Judiciary Allied Pact by advising the President to dissolve Parliament under Article 261, subsection 7, for failing in its obligation of conduct. We thank the Chief Justice.
Swala hili ni kuhusu wajibikaji wa sheria kama nchi, na tunamtazamia Mheshimiwa Rais wa Kenya aonyesha kwamba Kenya ni nchi ambayo inawajibika.
Na usilaumu Maraga, maana si Maraga alijipeleka kotini. Wananchi walienda kotini kuuliza ni kwa nini bunge imekataa kupitisha 2/3. Kwa hivyo ni jukumu la Maraga kuhakikisha, na yeye pia ameambia wananchi ukweli wa mambo ni kwamba ni hivi tunafaa kufanya.
This, however, has not gone down well with a cross-section of leaders who are set to vacate their position should President Kenyatta ring the bell on the dissolution as advised.
Hii ni kitu ambaye hiyo decision anajaribu kumake ni kuoneshana kama yeye ndiye alikuwa mtu wa mwisho kusema hivyo. He can actually throw this country into a constitutional crisis.
Hivi sasa sisi mimi aswa sishtuki. Tukiambiwa twende nyumbani tunaenda ama nini wananchi?
Ni mambo ambayo tunaomba rais asikubali na awache mula wetu wale wamechaguliwa 12th parliament ishe ili tuweze kumaliza mula wetu ndio watu waweze kurudi kwa kura.
Women who have been lamenting from the marginalization caused by the said 2/3 gender rule say should President Kenyatta fail to heed to the Chief Justice call, then they will be left with no choice but to head to the streets of justice to seek solace that will compel President Kenyatta to dissolve Parliament.
Tutakuwa kama FIDA tunatilia mkazo, ikibidi twende kotini tutaenda.
The women further took a swipe at the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, who declared intent to halt Maraga's decision through a court process.
The move to court is too little too late, and he should have approached the court for interpretation for the Chief Justice wrote to them on non-compliance in line with the Article 261, subsection 6 on reporting progress.
What remains to be seen is whether the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission will be able to handle the by-election, with the focus shifting to President Kenyatta to see when and if he springs into action and follows through with Maraga's advice. Martin Opio.
As we hear, that's where we stand right now. Which way forward? Do they dissolve it before Parliament's term ends? But the real question really is whether they dissolve it or not. Is that the solution to the problem that we have? That's our question of the day right here. Let's have it up as well. Would the dissolution of Parliament solve the gender imbalance issue? We'd love your feedback on this. Would the dissolution of Parliament solve the gender imbalance issue? You can send your feedback in the WhatsApp number at the bottom of the screen. We want your feedback as we discuss this issue. Would the dissolution of Parliament solve the gender imbalance issue? Send us your feedback, your thoughts, your comments on the WhatsApp number at the bottom of the screen, even as we jump into that particular conversation right here. In studio, joined by Dr. Boni Khalwale. Good morning, Dr.
Good morning, sir.
Karibu sana. Welcome to the show.
Nashukuru.
Asante sana. In the conversation via Skype, we have governance expert Milly Lwanga. Morning, Milly. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Great.
Okay, fantastic stuff. And even before we start the show, right off the bat, Milly, as I told Dr. Khalwale that you are coming, you'd be on the show today, he asked, why is Milly always working from home? Akudio.
Next week I will be in the studio.
Okay.
Last week I said the reality shock. It's now settling in. I think I even saw, for example, the deputy president arrive at Jubilee House, no mask. Most of the people around him, no masks. So the reality is here. If our leaders show us that, we follow.
Okay. Fine. Our promises are dead, so I'm sure Dr. Khalwale will be waiting for you here next week at such a time. Let's jump into this big elephant in the room right now. Boni, from where we stand,
yes,
what do you think is feasible right now? Because as you can see, that where the AG is going to the court saying that the resources right now are strained with COVID and all that's happened, the timelines right now really aren't realistic. Do you think it's feasible for President Kenyatta to dissolve Parliament on this advisory?
The people we are listening to are interested parties. People have listened to the Speaker of the National Assembly. Mm-hmm. That is an interested party. He's going to lose a job. Mm-hmm. Just like women have been without an opportunity to be in Parliament like Muturi, he should then appreciate that that pain he's feeling is what our women have been feeling when they were seeing that their chance in the Constitution was not being activated so that they could come to Parliament. Mm-hmm. So Muturi should keep quiet. Yes, we appreciate that he's our former Speaker. Yes, we appreciate that he's a good lawyer. But under the Constitution of Kenya, the role of interpretation of the Constitution is not in the hands of Parliament. Parliament is for making laws. But interpretation of law is by the judiciary. Right. The judiciary has spoken. So, and I want to blame you guys of the media. You're giving too much airtime
to this issue?
To peoples of opinion. Mm-hmm. The Maraga did not give a decision on the opinions of Kenyans, women, legislators, jokers like me on this very important matter. Mm-hmm. He was giving a statement on a matter of law. And do you know, when courts make decisions on matters of law, they base it on only two things. They base it on the weight of evidence, and they base it on the provisions of the law.
Right.
So, what is the provision of the law? The provision of the law is that if Parliament fails in its legislative agenda, and somebody appeals to the Chief Justice will advise the President to dissolve Parliament. And when so advised, in very few words, the President shall dissolve Parliament. Mm-hmm. That is the law.
Right.
Now, what is the weight of evidence? The weight of evidence, which was weighed by the Chief Justice, included, amongst other things, A, the 4 different incidences when Parliament failed to agree on this provision.
Right.
2, the weight included the decision by the High Court, I think by Justice Mativo, I'm not too clear, by Justice Mativo, on the confirming that actually Parliament had failed. And the other weight of evidence is that the Chief Justice, in his wisdom, did not just decide in his bedroom. He invited the speakers of the two houses. He invited the Attorney General. They have been given a chance. They have been heard by the Chief Justice, and the Chief Justice has then decided. So the debate in the country now is on people's opinions.
Right.
Who cares the opinion of all these people, even if these people include the so-called big people? The Constitution did not contemplate a situation whereby the opinions of other players would then be sought after the Chief Justice has made a decision. I want to jump
that right there and just have you, a rebuttal on this one, even before I go to Millie, because yes, as the Kenyan proverb goes, the law is very clear, as everyone says, but the context in which the law is being applied right now is probably the question people are asking, in the sense that, can we afford this right now? Should we take our money and use it for this particular issue with all that's happened? In that space and context of what the country is dealing with, do you think the advisory still holds the weight it would had we not gone through COVID as well?
Yes, you are taking me back to what I've already refused. That why are we entertaining opinion? The so-called, the people who are fighting for BBI,
right,
they have been pushing their case that to put this country into the mode that would be called the ideal mode, we must improve on our constitution. That in itself is an admission that the constitution is the fulcrum around which this country turns. And that being the case, since this time, the constitution we have is the one we have, and it is saying what Justice Maraga has said,
right,
then we should abide by it. Wait a minute. You've had some of the debates in the House, some of them by members of Parliament who are very senior lawyers. I listened to my brother Amolo, Otiende Amolo, when he was speaking. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that he's the guy who qualified for senior counsel just the other day. If you go that route, you will never agree, because everybody has an opinion on this matter, and naturally, the opinions that they advance are meant to suit them.
Right.
Yes.
Let me get Millie in on this one as well. Millie, we are standing at a point where those giving their opinions are those who have literally a dog in the fight. They're the ones who lose the privileges and the perks they have as politicians. And up until yesterday, the president, the former PM, deputy president had largely been silent on this particular issue. Now that we've seen the AG going to challenge this in court, do we have a scenario that if indeed they lose the case, now we'll have to have a dissolution of parliament? Is that what we're seeing right now with these decisions being made?
I think that one of the things that need to note, I'd like to start from there, is that the CA, in making that advisory opinion that he did and presenting it to the president, was not looking at the circumstances within which Kenya operates. It was focused on the law. And the law was that if there had been failure and there was no clear indication that there had been any change since the response was made to him, that he should be able to make that advisory. There had been no change in the circumstances. There still had not been a compliance within Bunge of passing a legislation that would ensure that there is always compliance. Much as people are arguing that perhaps when the Senate had increased in the number of women represented there, meeting it by I think 1.3 only, the fact remains that they had not, and there is no law that had been put in place. So under those circumstances, really, I think the CJ's hands were tied. He could only have given such an advisory in those circumstances. Now, whether Parliament would be dissolved or not, I think the beauty is that in a country that works under the rule of law, one of the things that we would note is that people can go and seek opinions. Last time when he ordered a repeat presidential election, IBC rushed to court and asked him to clearly ask the Supreme Court to explain to them what this repeat election actually meant, because there was a lot of discourse in the country as to what it entailed. Was it going to be the first two? Was it going to be all of them? And people went to court and did give an advice on what their interpretation was. So IEBC should be going to court now to ask again some of the issues that are being raised, like what Otiende Amolo, Honorable, said, that in his opinion, it amounts to a general election. In many other lawyers' opinion, it is a parliamentary election, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an election. So as many as lawyers as they are in a room, there'll be those opinions, and the court can again give advice onto this. Now, whether he could have still given that same advice when the circumstances were different is again a question that the court can interpret. Remember that many at the time we hold cabinet secretaries accountable, saying that you cannot say these decisions were made when someone else was sitting on the chair, and that now you've come, the circumstances should be different. We say you are the one in the office now, the directive was made to the person seated at that office, and therefore you will suffer the consequences. Now, if then Parliament still was, and the circumstances still remained the same, was the CJ justified making that, in delivering that advisory opinion? Now, that is again something that the courts would interpret. But I think that it would be good for parliamentarians to also begin to prepare themselves psychologically that they should be going home sooner than they anticipated. Because again, if we adhere to the law as is, then chances are that the president will dissolve parliament if he obeys the law. And it is not much as there's been a lot of talk that sometimes, many a time, the executive does not obey the law, including the appointment of the 41 judges that JSC had appointed. He has obeyed the law in the past. He did not declare himself president. He followed the law when the Supreme Court said, go back to the ballot. Painful as it was for him, and we all saw it in his speech, we could feel the pain, but he went back to the ballot. So he may again choose to obey the law, because when it is a constitutional provision, he has tried to obey the law in a number of instances. So he may obey the law. So I think rather than parliamentarians being very confident that they may not go home, it is important for them to realize that on a balance of probabilities, they may go home. Maybe not right away, but sooner than they anticipate.
Boni, even when you look at this, the timing of all of this for someone who's been following this particular issue is quite curious, because the High Court gave this ruling, I think in March 2017, about the fact that there was still an issue with the gender imbalance in the House, gave the Parliament 60 days, and from there we knew that from this particular point the CJ could give this particular advisory that has been given now. So the timing on this as well is a big question, and the person who gave that particular timing, this particular advisory, giving it 3-4 months right before he leaves office, many questions being asked on that as well, because this advisory could have been given in 2017. What's your take on that?
I agree with you, but I wouldn't want to defend Justice Maraga. In fact, on this one, as far as Maraga is concerned, let us leave him alone. There is a lot of reason for us to congratulate him for not rushing with this decision, because it is a momentous decision, as it were. So he has made the decision. The Constitution expects that he make that decision. He was invited into making this decision. Don't forget this, that actually Kenyans went to the Chief Justice and told them, we want you to dissolve Parliament in accordance with the Constitution. So we should not be debating Justice Maraga. I think Luanga has said something which is very important. Honorable Otiende Amolo was trying to twist this election so that it looks like that the forthcoming election after the dissolution is going to be a general election. It cannot be a general election. A general election involves the other two arms of government. Namely, it involves Parliament and it involves the executive arm, where the executive arm would even bring in governors and the legislative arm would bring in MCAs and members of parliament and senators. That's a general, that's the general election. But the elections that we shall be going for is, in my view, not fair even to call it a mini election. It's not a mini election. In my view, it's not even fair to call it a by-election. It is a parliamentary election. It's an election specifically for parliament, not involving MCS, not involving governors, not involving the president. And if people's views must be brought on board, we want to say clearly here that there is no confusion. The new parliament that is going to come after the parliamentary election will be a new parliament. It will not be intended to complete the term of the 12th parliament. It will be a new parliament, only that its first agenda after being sworn in would be to pass the 2/3 gender law. If, by the way, they fail to do it, according to this constitution, the same process will be repeated again. They'll again be dissolved until the next parliament comes and passes the law. It is beautiful. It was meant to make sure that the constitution does not speak in vain. So Otiende should sit pretty. He wants to bring the presidential emotions on board, the gubernatorial emotions on board, so that he has security in numbers of people who are aggrieved. The president will not go home, the governors will not go home, the MCAs will not go home, because they have been doing their work. The people to go home are parliamentarians, and we respect them very much. When they come back, I know somebody like Amore is going to win his election. He's my neighbor in game. Their game is the neighbor Kakamega. He is very strong. He's going to come back. He should focus himself on re-election now. It's over. It's gone. Even if they go to court, the way they are attempting to go to court, the court will eventually rule that the dissolution must take place. Look, the Attorney General is being very unfair to the country. He is supposed to advise the president. So we are expecting that the Attorney General would be telling the president that let us fix ABCD in the next few days, in the next few weeks before you dissolve parliament. Instead of telling that, he's telling him, let's go and contest it in court. Why?
When you say the AG being unfair, because we do know the AG doesn't speak on his own behest, are we saying in extension the president is being unfair? Is this?
The office of the Attorney General is an independent office. And he's supposed to be the chief legal officer.
An advisor to the president.
Yes, to the government. And you can see, instead of giving him advice that this is what the constitution says, he's telling him, let us go to court. Go to court to do what? Go to court to do what?
Okay, and it's already in the corridors of justice. This one, as you can see, it makes the front page of the People Daily right here. Boni Khalwale says the AG being unfair as he takes this one to court. What's your opinion on this one? Will the dissolution of parliament really be the solution to this gender imbalance that we're seeing? You can send your messages on the WhatsApp number at the bottom of the screen. There's a question that we have it. Let's have it up on screen. Would the dissolution of parliament solve the gender imbalance issue? If indeed parliament is dissolved, does that manage to solve the gender imbalance issue? Send your feedback on the WhatsApp number at the bottom of the screen. We have a couple of messages we'll look at before we get to our break. Let's have them up. Let's see that. Scrolling down. For me, I don't think dissolution of parliament will solve the 2/3 gender rule. What is the surety that today, if we go for a referendum, Kenyans will choose 2/3 of the women into the parliament? I suggest we look into other ways of solving this problem and not dissolution of parliament. That's Kimutai Gideon. Asante sana for that, Kimutai. Do you have another one? Let's scroll. Good morning, Jeff. Dissolution of parliament will not enable the 2/3 gender rule. Why? Because parliamentarians or MPs are voter-elected posts. So how will you force or request voters to elect women MPs? I wonder how Rwanda has achieved the same. That's Tom from Kisumu. Okay, let's have that final message before we get to our first break. Hello, Jeff. Dissolving parliament will not solve the problem. This issue is weightier than through imagining. Will there be constituencies to field women only? These are the sections of constitution we need to deal with. That's Gabriel from Nakuru. Let's have it up. Okay, that's the last message you have right there. Of course, we get a short break. Keep your feedback coming in. You can get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV. The WhatsApp number at the bottom of the screen. Is the solution the solution? We ask, discuss that, of course, and more after the break.